So my last year of high school, I ended up doing all of my arts because I didn't take it throughout high school. And then once I finished college, I ended up demanding a job in the school that I went to, right, in the college. So in demanding politely, they
Politely.
right, they were nice enough to give me what is called kind of like a TA position.
Okay.
And from there, what I did was I really just got to know every department head. That was my plan, to be able to say hi, good morning, and so forth to every department head. And I got the opportunity to tutor some of the grads, post-grads, to get jobs. And when I did that, and they saw my potential, my first job really as a teacher was in fashion, right? I thought it would be in graphics or something like that, right? But it was really fashion. And I helped develop that particular department, as well as being in, fashion merchandising, advertising, computer graphics, digital media, and film, right? And audio. So I ended up teaching in 2 different schools, and I did that for probably a little over 10 years afterwards.
Wow. And what do you, especially like as a professor and like creative, like people that are upcoming, I think because it's a very vital stage for like creators. How were you able to manage, like, I'm trying to find the best words, like how were you able to manage, like, knowing that the responsibility of like this creative's future, like, is you're part of that.
The responsibility. When you do something you love, right, where you really enjoy, even throughout teaching, there was a lot of creative aspects, and I loved it. We were in the CBC building, which was really, really nice to have, huge studio, right? Each studio, we had, I think, about 3 different studios. Each studio, you could build a building inside of the studio, right? Each class that I had was probably around 20 or so students in each class. And when you have so many creative people and students around you, some of them putting together their own films, right? They want you to act even as a teacher and things like that. And I was so young at the time. I was one of the youngest teachers, or actually the youngest teacher in the school at the time.
This one is like the coolest guy.
Yeah.
Everyone's guy.
People thought I was a student
Of
before.
course.
So, it was really interesting because, in one department, I was teaching people how to put together, fashion magazines and doing photo shoots and so forth, sometimes even on the weekend, because I'm a photographer, so I used to take the studios and do that, and also have the students participate. So, so once you're doing something that you really, really enjoy and love, there's not too much that you're really thinking about, oh, this is too much, this is too much. When I worked other places, I used to work at IBM and, selling computers, and sometimes that was too much, right? But when you work in the things and fields that you love, then it feels a little bit easier. Yeah.
Oh, that's a perfect answer. Wow. Okay, I love that.
Were you also referencing how we worked together, and because of him doing what he did and meeting me as a creative? I'll say that I have to call him Mellow. Tiku sounds so strange for me. Yeah, because that's my Mellow, my man. But so Mellow has a wonderful online course that he does for creatives, where he talks about the worth, your worth.
Oh, wow.
And as I'm a person in progress.
Yeah.
I gave away too much because I didn't understand my worth in the beginning, and what he understood about what he saw about my potential and the things that I was giving away more than I needed to. It's not to say that you can't volunteer and work together and barter with different people in the industry. It's just at some point you have to set you set standards for yourself. And so his course really works with creatives in helping them establish that and not be afraid of asking for what you deserve. And so I think in terms of his work as a teacher, and then seeing me as a creative, he was able to build a lot of structure in terms of being able to honor my worth, honor my work, and just, you know, build a brand that is something that can be scalable and something that can be something that you can make a living from.
Absolutely. And sorry, you go ahead.
Just to add to that, you know, a lot of people really struggle with knowing how to operate, and that's what I had to learn throughout the years. I didn't know exactly how to operate because there was nobody there to show me or teach me, right? And as you go through, you know, one job after the next, find that people are willing to take, right?
Always.
They want to tell you what they want, and then they were willing to just take it and not really give you anything for it, right? And so you start to question your work, you start to question yourself, and sometimes people even just put down their art because of it,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But what I found is, opposed to blaming everybody else, you have to understand that everybody that has, or everywhere you go that that has a company that exists and has been operating for so long, have certain things in place that allow them to still operate. And what are those things? And sometimes it's very, very simple. So it's a very simple thing, some type of a system or something in place, some type of paper, you know, do you give a receipt, you know, things of that nature that you deal with every day. And once you start putting those things in place for yourself, people will move to you as opposed to you having to move.
And it's so funny, you guys, like you mentioned the course. I'm like, I think I would make the link to the course. Because I was literally having this conversation recently with my mom. I was like, I don't think there's any creative work I've done up to this point that I can put like a price to. But at the same time, it's also so discouraging because it's like, bruh. Yeah, I need to survive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So honestly, I think that's even an important work that you're doing, honestly, and I respect that so much. But I definitely need a link, please. I'm like, I'm gonna do
Absolutely, and it's worldwide. It's not just a Toronto thing. This is something about who you are as a person and how you see yourself and the work you're doing. So it's worth it.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna dive over into LA now. I am gonna bring out this book. We're gonna delve into the book. This is Ellie Wade's first book volume or first volume of the book. I'm not sure of the English now.
It's okay.
Yes, but it's titled The Adventures of a Recovering Sex Addict, Volume 1, Married Men and Fuckboys. Okay. Why the title? I want to know why the title. What inspired that title, honestly?
I think that we live in a very hypersexual society. I think everything is sexualized, and so we lead that way. And we lead that way without understanding the damage that it can do to your spirit. You know, people talk about the soul ties. I don't want to. You may want to get me to go there, but
Girl,
I would
it's
say,
literally question 7 here. It's literally right here.
yeah. So I just wanted to exploit that and kind of turn it on itself. And I would say that I really believed that I was a love addict, and in order to get love, I would barter for it with sex, for a lot of things. You know, not everybody. I'm not an addict in that way, but the part that some people don't understand is there's nothing wrong with sex. There's nothing wrong with being hypersexual. When it falls into the realm of addiction, too much alcohol, too much anything, and you, and I will genuinely say that I had a love addiction, and it didn't matter what it cost me to get it. And that's where it caused the problem. Married Men and F-Boys being the first volume is because that was a lot of people that were allowing me to be the love addict and giving me false promises, making me think that that's what all I could deserve. And so they were my teachers essentially.
Wow.
They weren't really, nothing about my books throw men under the bus, because men have their own complexities, and we often as women will disregard their experience and speak for them, but you can't speak for them.
I don't want to get ahead of myself, but just even as you're saying this now, you kind of this is a question I was going to ask at the end.
Oh,
At the end of your book,
at the end of the book.
let me tell you.
We're just gonna fast forward to all the stories.
Sorry, like now you're on this. I just have to go because there's a sentence.
Okay.
At the end of the Adventures of Recovering Sex Addict Volume 1, Married Men and Fuckboys, on page 75, you say, but healing is a process, not a destination. I want them to know that dick just isn't enough.
Did I say that? Wow.
Sorry, that line struck me, and even like with what you're saying now, because there's a discussion we're having, like, how do you draw the line between like sexual liberation and then self-destruction?
Yeah, well, you know when you can't look at yourself in the mirror, or you feel bad about the things that you're doing, you've crossed the line, right? If you're having a hard time with the choices that you're making sexually, then you've crossed the line. If you don't know how to have a conversation and ask for what you want, you've crossed the line. Maybe you shouldn't be. I mean, we do it anyway. We do things. You know, we say that we're going to start a diet, and by Wednesday we're already have eaten half the kitchen. But you know, we know better. It doesn't mean we do better. So that statement of when you know better, you do better. That's not always true. When you've made a choice to do better, you'll do better, especially when you know how.
Okay, and now like I know you're also like a podcast host, you're a writer, and you're also a story coach.
Yes,
Very,
I
very.
love the story coaching.
Okay.
Yeah, that's been it's newer. The story coaching is newer, and a lot of my clients come from the U.S. because Toronto is its own interesting. It's its own interesting construct, but yeah, I put it out there that I can help you. I'm a great brainstormer. So if you have an idea, because people can also just book a session called Pick Your Brain based on my website. And whatever you're thinking about, you can literally go in there, book an hour with me, and I'll just be like your best friend picking my brain about like, I have this idea, I'm not really sure. And then I'll be like, wow, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Because that's how my creative brain works. I like to make a lot of associations, and people don't realize how great they are. They're so brilliant.
Honestly, and I think what you're doing is very, very important. And I think as a creative, like, you definitely always need like that second voice.
Absolutely.
Like, okay, yeah, probably let's refine here and there.
And you don't have to be refined, and that's why people book with me. Because it allows you the freedom to make mistakes there, so that when you create the product, you're feeling really good about it.
I'll just add that everybody has some type of creative process.
Yes.
Thought of an idea, they have, you know, it's almost like brainstorming. You have things all over the place. You're not sure how to put it all together and put the string or the lines where they need to go. And LA actually, she knows how to get your mind moving and being able to, and the way how she, I don't know, somehow she just knows how to take in all that information. She'll remember it, and she'll start asking questions and figuring ways on how to work your mind in the direction that you need to go. And once you start feeling that and you have that direction, you just feel more powerful about it. You're confident about yourself and what it is that you want to do and want to put out, right? So that's what I found, you know, from a lot of her students that she's worked with, and including myself too. So yeah.
So you guys, this is a power couple here. I'm gonna be leaving both links now. Good, I'm about to just finish my conference. Okay. So and you know, even just talking about that, like, cause you're like I said, across multiple, like you do your art across multiple platforms, across multiple mediums. How are you able to, you know, kind of fit each? I mean, there's not like a particular standard that it should be done, but how are you able to kind of be flexible to each of this? Like, you have a book, you have a podcast, you have your show Testy AF. I know you're also a trauma facilitator. How do you balance all this?
To me, it's all extensions of the same thing. It's the learning how to live with your healing. I talk about a healing lifestyle, and I've been granted the opportunity to. Yes, I came from U of T, and I worked there for 13 years. But you know, in a sense, getting sexually assaulted, getting into car accidents, getting sick actually gave me the space to heal myself. And as I began my healing journey, I was doing almost 34 to 40 hours a month of therapy, physical therapy, mental emotional therapy, learning how to set boundaries. I was learning so much about myself, and this was stemming from COVID, where the whole world kind of stopped and provided that space. And when we were able to start to slowly go back to different things in our society, I realized that I need to keep healing. This is whether I go back to work or not, I need to continue a way of living within my healing. And not in a, when people talk about healing, it sounds so dreadful and like heavy, and so that's why I also tag on let the adventures begin, because I'm a very adventurous person. I used to be very active, hiking. I can't wait to jump out of a plane, and he's not so eager.
Mellow.
He's more mellow. Yeah, I'm very much more the one that's excited about, just everything. I love to talk to people. There's just so much that life has to give, and if I allow my trauma and the things that I've been with to define this experience, it doesn't feel well, and you have a temperature inside of you of what feels good. And there's feel good, and then there's feel good with responsibility. So it's not just being reckless abandon. It's about, communion. It's art. Living creatively is a process in healing and living every day. And so that is a co-creation with your creator. And so to your point, that's what allows me to do. It's like, oh, this situation calls for a podcast. Oh, I need to write a book for this. I just want to communicate to people a way of thinking that is different than what they've experienced, in a very very honest, very truthful, genuine. And I always used the word vulnerable until I heard Jason Wilson talking about vulnerability and what it defines. And so I will take on the understanding that transparency for me is really what is needed in our community, because we keep so many things hidden. And we don't talk about the things that need to be spoken about. And the people live in shame, they feel guilty, embarrassment, and then you can't feel empowered from that space. And we need to be empowered. Our children need us to be empowered. So that's why.
Wow. I'm just, you both speak so beautifully, but even like you mentioning vulnerability, like I said, I've been reading this book and I've gone like a very far way, and I can't help but like ask, like, were there some personal elements in here, and how were you able to balance like being vulnerable, especially in the African community?
Yeah.
And telling your truth, essentially.
Yeah, well, that's when you talk about the cover of the book. The title is one thing, but you also see that Callie Church is this character who I've created to represent me and so many other women. And she's naked on the cover because that's how she writes. She writes from a naked place. She writes from a vulnerable place. But you also notice, if you look closer to the book, that she's looking back at the person. She's not just being objectified. And this is very academic in a sense of how you identify art in a sense. But when you have a person in a picture, that person isn't making eye contact with the audience. That person is more objectified. You get to gaze upon her. You get to look at that person and pinpoint things about them that they may or may not want to be seen. But in a way, she's looking back at you. So it's not just, so she's more of a subject as well. So she's objectifying herself, but she's doing it from her subjectivities, her experiences. It's who she is as a person. It gives her more power.
Wow.
Yeah.
Honestly, I love that. And so, like, I'm like, how do I ask this? Because I've been reading this book, Ellie. Let me tell you. We're having a good time reading it.
It's a guilty pleasure.
That was a wonderful time reading it. But, like with your personal, elements of like your personal experiences, are you okay like sharing some of them?
Absolutely. I mean, Callie Church is a character, and I put myself into the character, but I put a lot of the girls that I've spoken to in my circle into the character. I've done so many interviews with people around Cocktails with LA, late night cocktails, that, you know, it's fun to heal when you have a healthy imagination as well. So you use real life situations and then you embellish it to make a point. How much embellishment? Maybe there's very little, maybe there's a lot, maybe some stories have more than others. But the point of it is to go on the journey with her. And there is, I always call this, the books that I'm writing right now, self-help erotica. So you get that guilty pleasure, you love the stories of, you know, oh my gosh, she's off the wagon and she's having a great time. It looks like I am.
I think what I love the most about the book is just so how honest and realistic it is. Like I could relate a lot of the feelings Kali discussed about. Like I think it was even like some of her experiences with some of these men, and then she's like feeling like a lot of shame, you know, towards it. Now even going more into like sex, like generally, like I really think it's unfair how society criticizes women, you know, who are just like for just existing like sexually more than they, you know, criticize men. And I felt that reality even in the book. So honestly, kudos.
Thank you. It's honestly, it's writing from a place of being naked, of being transparent, looking at a situation and describing it for what it is, without trying. I don't need to look for words to paint the picture. It's literally the experience. You can watch videos, you can hear what people are saying online. These are real stories. I think there was a woman who became very popular for telling the story of this narcissistic man, this liar, and people were watching, and every week she had a new segment of her story. People want to hear that. One, because maybe that's not their experience, but they're like, this cannot be real. Another reason might be it's an escape. It's like, wow, I can't believe that. Or you might know a girlfriend or a cousin or somebody who's going through that experience.
Absolutely.
So, you know, women can be protective of each other, and we want to hear these stories and want to understand. But I also believe that men have a voice, and so I keep preferencing that because men are sub-characters in the book. But you think that
Dante, Aziz, Young Mr. Nige, I am coming, like, when I read Young Mr. Nige, I was like, Ellie, like, Nigerians, why are we always disgracing ourselves everywhere? We entered our book too, and you should.
But he's not disgracing himself. He's, you know, a lot of people are opportunistic. They see something, and to Mello's point about, you know, being a creative and not owning your worth, Callie Church did not know her worth in the beginning, and she chose relationships based on her understanding of herself.
Her experience with young Mr. Nige infuriated me so much, because, like, you know, when she was like, he was like, oh, I don't know if he said, or it was just like you, like, writing when you're like, oh, like, he didn't think, how do I put it now, like, this sex, it wasn't like as sexually exciting. I was like, what does that mean?
Which Nigerian man are we gonna get in trouble today?
I was like, oh, you just have a high sex drive, okay? Leave my girl alone.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a high sex drive.
Yeah.
We make ourselves feel ashamed for things that we like pleasure.
Absolutely.
And pleasure isn't wrong, but it can get distorted.
Speaking of pleasure, you're right. Like, Kali experiences like cunnilingus quite.
Oh yes, Julie.
Julie Mango.
Every woman should name her vagina. I'm just saying it.
This was okay. So that everyone is not lost. So you guys, we're referring to the book and character. In the book, Kali refers to her vagina as her Julie Mango, and her Julie Mango gets a lot of love in this book. Okay.
Yes.
So what would you say to men who don't believe in it? Cause I was like, girl, like how?
I think that. Well, see, we were just listening to something online about chemistry, connection, and what was the other C? There was a difference between chemistry, connection, and something. I don't know what it was. But the thing is, if you're going into a relationship for sexual...
A young girl, like, to be able to speak up.
Yeah. What we're speaking about. We're talking about self-acceptance. We're talking about being able to communicate. And if you're in a relationship where you don't know how to communicate, that's an indicator that you may not want to go in that direction sexually yet with that individual or ever. Because if they don't respect the things that you're saying and you can't communicate around it, that's a red flag that you should not ignore.
I'll add as well. That, well, anytime that you get into a relationship, right? Not every person speaks about these types of things to each other, right? So they expect that you would just know. You would expect that, you know, the person just knows when you're feeling something and wanting something, right? And if they don't know, or if they, you know, they're not catching the cues and things of that nature, you tend to get upset,
Yes.
right? As opposed to, you know, saying, hey, you know, let's communicate about it, right? So just always knowing that your partner is not always going to know exactly, and they're supposed to know. It shouldn't be a thing that you expect either, because your expectations will lead to disappointments, right? So not all expectations, but certain expectations will lead to disappointment. So you want to make sure that you're, you know, getting into a better habit of communicating and learning how to communicate, right? Because we don't communicate the same way, right? So as, you know, as men, we have to figure out ways on how to communicate to women and women vice versa to make sure that we're talking to things.
Have you ever heard the expression, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater? That's a whole expression that they have. Nasty people. I won't go there. I can, but I won't go there. But the gist of that is, you know, you meet somebody who has a lot of things that you love about that person, and then they don't do that thing that you really want sexually, for example. Do you throw away the whole relationship? Well, you know, just like you may not go into all sexual acts right off the rip with that person, you want to see how you grow with that person individually. Maybe over time, they'll come to understand lovemaking in a different way as a result of giving them the space to grow sexually. Maybe that's something and that takes that communication, it takes trust. It definitely doesn't take aggression towards him and shoving his head where he doesn't want it. You know, and let's be honest, it's not something a lot of people learn to do that through porn, through social media, through my books that say this is what the woman wants. So there's a lot of women that don't want that. Callie Church does.
Let's clarify.
Let's just clarify. Callie Church wants that. But if Callie fell for somebody who did not want to do that, she would, depending on where she was in her life and what that relationship meant for her, I believe that she would learn how to say and allow space for that person.
Callie's like, okay, sorry.
People confuse Callie and Ari all the time.
Sorry. I'm talking about trying rice today.
Yes, not just pasta.
That's what
Just for the record.
Yeah. But sorry. No.
And that's what it is. You have to allow space for people to grow.
Yeah. And I think the reason why, because you asked like why, like it's this culture of also I've been still guys.
Thank you. I think so.
No worries.
I think so.
Yeah, I think that really has like messed up this, you know, because like I hear you saying like communicate, but it's like
I feel that in the second book where she pops off, she has this amazing sex experience, finds herself doing something she's never done before. When the sex is over, he leaves the room, comes back, and grabs his phone. And you hear her go through the experience of, man, how do I don't feel good.
Yeah.
What do I tell him? He didn't come here for that. We understand that this is just
he
supposed
got
to
cracked
be.
to this man, okay?
Yeah, he didn't sign up for that.
Yes,
He didn't sign up
exactly.
to emotionally regulate
Yes.
me. He signed up to benefits,
Yeah.
right? This friendship. And so you have to own your stuff. A lot of women, sorry ladies, we have a hard time being accountable to what we say we can do, and then we turn around and want more. And you can't make him move forward and get what you want in a very honest way, in the love that you want for yourself.
I'll add this to as well. So,
Men, let's speak to the men.
well, the thing is, if women have a hard as well, right? So sometimes, you might look to the men for the answers, and the men might not have the, right? So I just wanted to at least.
Yeah, they're human beings.
Yeah.
We really treat them
Yeah.
utilitarian, like pick them up and treat them like whatever. It's not your vibrator, it's a human being.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but also it's
That's why some women can no, but it's very, because our community, black men, black women thing a lot. And it's because there's so much pain there. And that's because people aren't being honest about what it is. We keep choosing badly and blaming each other for the choices that we're making. You can be alone, and it might hurt to be alone, but go pick up a hobby. You don't know. You got to do other things than just pine away looking for the man to fulfill anything else that you want, and vice versa.
Yeah, and that's one thing I loved about Kali, even in the book, because she was still living her life. Like,
Oh
my
yeah.
girl was wearing the grenade. Girl. Yeah, honestly, I really like that's one thing I really would say like I took from Kali, just still being able to live her life, and I love that she was also very forgiving of herself. She didn't stay too long on things, like she allowed herself to move on.
Yeah. Well, to stir up the pot, it's because she's saved.
Yeah.
Now, how do you get saved and be a sex addict at the same time? That's also taboo, right? When you talk about, she has a very strong relationship with God, and she still would slip off the wagon and end up on somebody she wasn't supposed to be on.
Like Miss was it Aziz?
Aziz,
From church that she left church for.
oh yes,
I was
that
like,
was
girl,
Aziz.
come on, don't let the
Go
Holy
back
Ghost
to
catch
church.
you.
But if Christian,
Yes.
and Jesus died for her, then she has to allow for process to happen where she goes and her reflection becomes more like her creator. Who she is in this moment is not who she is in book 2, is not who she is in book 3,
Okay.
right? So she's growing as a person. When we take people's lives and keep a snapshot of where you met them and don't allow people to grow, which is what we do with each other, then we're the one losing out, because people can grow into some amazing human beings.
Yeah, I'm like, you're talking to me earlier.
I'm talking to everybody, myself included.
Yeah, because I'm like, it's so hard, but
It is hard. We're hard on ourselves.
it's being a human being is fun. But even now going more into like the sex conversation, so I was like, even like with the sex talk, I wanted to know, like, for both of you, when and who do you think should be having this conversation, like the sex talk, like introducing the person to like what sex is?
What do you mean, like a young person?
I would say young. Yeah. Okay.
Like how you have sex?
So my question is like, to what age do you think you should even be talking to young kids about sex, and who should be like? Is it the school? Is it the parents? Like, who should be having this conversation?
Well, for me, you'll know he has younger. We have a blended family, so he has younger kids, and I have like mid to older. But you have to. But I pay attention to what my children are looking at. What is around them. Exposed to something that they have critical understations.
I'm like, no, you guys look amazing. You both look amazing. You both are.
Don't worry, girl. That ain't nothing. When he told me that he had sex, it was great to hear that comfortable, but it was also like a little cringe, like, my God, my son's telling me. The reason why it was cringe was because he was like, I don't have to, so I'm like, am I gonna meet her? And he said, I don't have to wife her to like have sex. And I'm just like, oh God. He's become one of the people he's like out there in these streets, and I'm like, why?
He's a young boy.
He was a young boy. So I had to, when he said that, I had to make it very plain to him that just because your penis becomes erect and you want that, you have a desire for that person, doesn't mean you love that person. And most importantly, that stimulus is coming from you. You're excited about who you are and you want to share that with someone else. Nobody is making you feel that way. You're the one. And so a lot of men think that when a woman is wet, they're killing the game, they're doing that thing. No, she's feeling herself.
Yes.
And that's what allows her to be, stimulated. Of course, it's a give and take and there's other things, but it's really important to keep a 12-year-old different than a 12-year-old. He gets uncomfortable about things. He's looking at myself. You won't forget the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yes.
Will Smith is like a predator on that show. I don't know if you realize it, but every episode is about some girl or something he wants to. And so I ask them questions that make them have critical conversations. What did you notice? How do they want to live their life? And it's not for me to judge. I can what I think might be good for them, for their own mental health and their own well-being. And that it's not good to just sleep with a lot of different people because soul ties, because of what you're losing, you're giving too much of yourself without understanding your worth. But they're getting it anyway, so they might as well know how to engage with it critically.
I'll just use the Fresh Prince as well. He's at an age where he's trying to figure out himself. He's very awkward, even though he seems confident. And he's trying to figure out ways on how to, interact with the opposite sex. And if you realize in the shows, he gets turned down quite a bit and things of that nature, right? Which humbles him to a degree, right? And gets him to learn a little bit more about himself as he goes, right? As you go through all the episodes and all the seasons and stuff, he starts to mellow out, right? He's not as active as he was before, right? So that's how men are, even though we might be labeled as maybe predators or whatever else and things of that nature, right? It may seem like that, right? Because of how men in a sense portray women, right? But we have our own insecurities and we're trying to figure out our way as we go along and we're trying to, stand our own on 2 feet. Right? So it's a lot of, balancing.
But let's not be there are some people that are just bad people.
Yeah.
And there's people that will utilize that information for wrong.
100%.
Which is why with this 5-year-old, we're very protective of her because she is just like cute is not like the word cute had a picture like she's she is beyond beautiful and just be here and she's so cute today she's gonna want to have sex.
Right in front of her.
I'm gonna be right there. Listen, no.
What are you doing?
It's like, girl, I got you. You're not gonna see this lady here.
But the conversation we had with her at 5 to ask her what she wants later, which is simply, do you want that person to hug you? Do you know that you can use your words to say, no, thank you? Like you can give them a dap, you can find different ways to interact in a way so that she knows that I don't like that. And if somebody does cross your boundary, hug her and kiss her, she like, good for you, you got that freebie. But you can say to that person, don't do that, okay. So, and just having practice and backing her up with it.
I have constant conversations with my mother, right?
Beautiful relationship.
Constant conversations, in front of others, behind closed doors as well, just so she knows that she could always talk to me about certain things. And not that I know everything, I ask a lot of questions that she can answer as well, right? I know where you couldn't ask any question at all.
Having that trustful relationship with parents, like you're saying, your son could call you like when he had sex, like I think that's honestly so empowering. There's so people that who went to probably not who went to and they had the ability to talk. Like I remember there was even this listening to a podcast and this lady was saying how she had gone out and had sex and had fallen pregnant, unfortunately, on herself because like nobody had really guided her on what
Right.
it is. And she was in that position where she was like, she didn't know she wanted to do an abortion because she couldn't tell her parents.
Right.
And then I think the man was like, encouraging her to do the abortion, but she didn't want to do it. But somehow they lost the baby, and she could not like reconcile that feeling. But she always started feeling like, oh, was it me that caused like the loss of the child? But she can't even talk to family. Like there's not like that kind of person. Like that's a whole like.
Yeah, they live in shame and it can kill them and
Ah.
alienates them and it actually really reduces their opportunity for their life chances.
Exactly. That's always my. I feel like that's a life ruined right there.
Absolutely.
Honestly, I think parents, just from hearing from you, but I think it's important to have an open relationship with your child that allows them to be able to confide in you, not for you to judge. Just confide. Confidentiality is very important.
Yeah.
Tell you.
Especially with boys and consent, what you talked about, this is very important for them to understand at a very young age.
Yes. And even I was thinking, like, do you think like there's an age period where you kind of have this talk with girls and it's different for boys, or would you say like it's very
That conversation includes both conversation about boys and girls in the conversation. I'm not telling my sons about just them as men. I'm explaining how women are as well, or not generalizing, but like in a sense generalizing, and things to look out for. So these are the different types that you might come in contact with, and these are some of the things that you may want to think about as you pursue that. Yeah.
I know this isn't the same thing because I had to have that conversation with my sister growing up, right?
Yeah.
And because I was put in a position where I had to, look after my brother, my sister, and so forth. My sister is, 10 years apart from me. But I had to have those discussions with her because I wanted to know everything when it came out to my sister, making sure that she was protected, right? So just like LA, my sister called me out of all people to tell me when her first time was. And just like LA, cringe.
That was
Right?
like, ew!
What are you talking about?
But, what's important is that our youth have somewhere to go to.
Yeah.
If they come to you, that means they respect you, right? Which is a huge thing, and I don't know how much respect a lot of youth have nowadays compared to, before, but, we need to close that gap somehow and continue the communication and conversation.
Yes, I think it's very important. Okay, now taking it even further.
Going deeper.
Guys, okay. Now I kind of want to talk about masturbation, especially and especially from a female perspective. I also want to hear from you both.
I'm not talking.
I plead the fifth.
So good, please. So good.
Well, I can say that now. Okay, but I even want to I think masturbation from the female perspective. What's your opinion?
I'm such a different person, so, and it's not because I'm an expert on it, but I came into masturbation very late because when I first tried to touch myself when I was younger, and my aunt saw that I wasn't doing anything, I was just holding my vagina, watching TV. You know how a man can just sit and they put their hand in their vagina, and they're just watching the TV. It's comforting. So I was really young when I first, cupped myself and just was watching TV, and this woman shamed me in front of all of my cousins and made it such a thing. Yeah, she was like, remove your hand. And I'm like, what do you mean? While I'm holding myself. My hand's good. And then she fully was like, the other hand. I can still hear it, that's why I say it. And so it was really shameful how touching yourself came to my awareness. Plus, I was being touched by other people. I came to know myself sexually before I learned my own sexuality. So that's why it wasn't until May 2020 was the first time I ever masturbated. And every girl that looks at me says, "Oh, I'm so sorry." They do that. So I understand that it's a whole vibe, but in truth, from 2020 moving forward, it's this beautiful exploration of yourself and what you can't communicate to your man what you want or what other options are available if you don't know what you like for yourself. Now, I know some men feel, intimidated by that. And if the woman is, wanting the vibrator more, one, she doesn't know how to talk to you. Or two, it's just that she's getting stimulated in a way that actual, penetration doesn't provide to her. Doesn't mean that you are not doing your thing, whatever. It also has a lot to do with the communication with your partner. If you can have lovely love making and you're passionate and all those things, but then she still wants to go and stimulate herself, that's the person who isn't getting a lot of the Julie attention that they need. And so there are many other ways to get that, because it's hard to get that kind of stimulation without doing that or using a vibrator.
I hope you guys are hearing.
Yeah, no, a majority of women do not get off, they're faking usually if they're just doing penetration, the likelihood of them and if they do, then that's just individual to them. That's not even so much what they're doing, but it's also the way that the penis is curved to your body, and if she knows how to maneuver herself, that's why some women like to be on top more than others. There's all different ways to try to hit the spot, but it's always easier than you just eat the Julie mango. It's just easier if you really. And so, younger men, I went in the F-boy thing. It's weird because I'm older, but I kind of cross generations because I look younger. So a lot of the younger men now are very more let's please her, where there's a little bit older younger men that aren't so into that. They would rather they're more selfish. They're more selfish with their sex.
That was another line in your book that struck me.
Yeah, guy, that's not cool, man.
You're like with selfish men. With selfish men,
I repeat that one.
You're like with selfish and toxic men, I knew to follow their lead. But with men that wanted to please me, it made me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Girl.
Yeah, because I'm used to the toxicity, right? So it's like I know how to handle myself, I know how to manage myself. As my Alana, big up to you again, she was like, maybe you're more comfortable in your trauma and you're not used to actually speaking up for yourself so you have to go. It's a journey. Honestly, letting your living be your healing. Healing is not just about, emotional scars. It's about accepting a lot. It's a radical acceptance of yourself.